In this world, we measure things by what they are. So to the fish, the land is their universe. And to the maggots in a corpse, the corpse is their cosmos. So how then can anyone be sure that our universe is or isn't itself as well, the size of a sharpened end of a pencil in the eyes of another layer of reality? Universes, dreams, realities, hallucinations, etc. These to my mind are all one and the same, that reality is that of a dream, that I am you and you are me. It's entirely possible that we are all one consciousness experiencing itself subjectively through an infinite multiverse that we have mistaken as a made-up delusion inside of our minds, when in reality, it's all the exact same thing. And life and death are two sides of the same coin spinning infinitely into eternity. Today I have a very special guest who I will be sitting down with over Skype. What you are about to see is the very first episode of Podcast Infinity, where I will be diving into the psyche of TripWhip as we discuss various topics revolving around philosophy, altered states of consciousness, the nature of reality, and much, much more. I'm DMT Infinity, and I invite you to witness the first episode of Podcast Infinity, a conversation from hyperspace. What are your opinions? What are your thoughts on the dream state?
I was going to do a lot of dream work recently to try and tackle this question. But I remember after having a DMT trip, I remember one thing happening was that towards the end of the trip, I was memory jumping. And so I literally I basically was just revisiting memories of my life, but I was in the memory and I felt entirely lucid. And eventually I was just tracking from one memory to the next. Every time my scenery was crumbling, transforming, and eventually everything crumbled and transformed into the room where I had smoked the DMT, and I was sitting there with the DMT in my hand, and I was like, oh, I guess this is real now. This is, not a memory, even though I think it is just a memory. So after that experience, I had this for me, I looked at experience and moments as all of these different realities out there, which we then, plug into and we join together to create a certain narrative. But each one of these memories or moments is actually independent of each other.
Think about it like this: dreams, realities, dimensions, hallucinations. All of these different concepts, could they not be talking about the exact same things?
Yeah, that's what yeah.
Could these not be different words for the exact same concept? In other words, reality is that of a dream?
Yeah, that's where I'd be getting to. So after experiencing all these, the fact that we're literally just experiencing these different independent moments, there was no way I could assign one moment more value and more realism over another moment. So when I'm in the dream, if I think it's real, if I think what I'm experiencing is genuine, that is the experience. Later when I wake up, I say, oh, that was just a dream. I change the context of the experience. I say, oh, it wasn't real. But when I'm there, if it's real because that's all that real is. It is the experience of real itself, the emotion that what I'm experiencing is real. So it's like, there was this theory, I was talking about this theory with another podcaster. He was saying how he thinks that there's these, the bridge between the metaphysical world and the world of relativity. This is explained through, string theory. One theory of string theory is that inside it contains every single potential parallel universe in the world. And so I would say that this realm of potentiality, this is what we plug into when we are using our imagination. So everything we imagine is actually potential realities. So one reason why we say...
You actually think that there is an infinite multiverse.
Exactly.
See, I think that each individual
verse itself, each reality, each individual universe in itself is exactly that. It is a universe. It is a reality. And what is reality? It in itself is a dream.
Right.
What do you think happens whenever we die?
When we die, I think the thing is, I don't think anything happens when we die. I think you've got life and you have death. So it's like when you die, I think many people will probably experience many different things. Personally, that's what I believe. I think as you're dying, the brain's breaking down, and if consciousness is dependent on the brain, then we will experience a very trippy, a very psychedelic experience as we are dying, but not after we've died. But this idea that life continues after we die, I don't really think that makes sense. I think it's like, I don't think we will ever die. It's very hard for me to verbalize it, but I don't think we will ever die. I think the nature of us are conscious living beings.
I think that death in itself is the equivalent of waking up into a dream, or waking up from a dream. The entire dream you took so seriously, and you thought that that was your one stable reality, and then you woke up in this reality, and then thought to yourself, oh, that was just a dream. This is actually my one steady reality. When in all actuality, could it not potentially be that they were both just as real as one another?
Right. I mean, like, you mean in the same way
that
like
a multiverse works.
Yeah.
And that goes on into infinity. In other words, you're always waking up.
I would agree. Like, I think it's probably the case that death will work to free you of the filter of the mind.
Hey, what is going on? This is just a really quick clip. This is way after the fact that we've already done the interview, but after listening to this portion of the clip again, it just makes me feel like whenever he's talking about this filter of the mind, that he is referring to the ego, and that whenever we die, then we are released from that filter, the ego. Yeah, no, I should have pointed that out during the interview, but because there were some audio issues and some technical difficulties going on while we were doing it, there was just a lot going on, and I was still getting used to some of the programs and whatnot, but no, I just wanted to add in that for the most part, I absolutely agree, and I do think that that is the case, and that whenever we die, that we are then released from that filter, aka the ego, and that we are able to actually transcendentalize to a higher state of consciousness through that. Now, I don't know exactly what his reply to that statement would be, but I just found that fascinating, and I just kind of wanted to put this in there. Thank you for watching this video.
Death will work to free you of the filter of the mind. So it's like you have a filter in the brain which plugs you into forgetting your connection with the multiverse, with consciousness and all that sort of stuff. It makes you, identify with the self. So that's probably what will break down when you die. And what's beyond that is the thing that's connected with everything. It is everything. It's the Godhead. It's nothing. It's all of that. It is one step above, one step outside of the multiverse. It's the consciousness that beams itself into the multiverse and then projects different realities. That's from gleaning from my psychedelic experiences. That's how I describe it, but I can't describe it any better than that. But what about yourself anyway? Have you had experiences coming out of this place? Waking up, you know what I mean?
What, in the realm of just waking up into another dream every single time that you die? Yeah,
like when like a DMT breakthrough or like a LSD breakthrough or something like that.
I've never experienced other realms on LSD. It's been very physical for me. DMT, on the other hand, it's almost like it is a portal to another realm.
Right.
It's almost too convincing that that is exactly what it is. That this isn't just some delusion inside of your mind, but that this is a very real experience that should be taken extremely seriously. Let me ask you something. Have you ever tried Salvia divinorum?
I haven't, not yet.
What do you know about Salvia?
I know, from what I've heard, it can turn you into orange juice for years and years and years. But from what I've seen and what I pieced together, it can transform your consciousness to identify with things which you otherwise couldn't identify with, which I guess is every psychedelic. But that's basically the extent of salvia that I know of.
Salvia can lead to some extremely profound experiences, but on the flip side, it can also be like being dragged into hell for all eternity.
Yes, I've heard it's like the demented cousin of DMT.
Yeah, that is a very good description of it. But at the same time, personally, I've had some of the best experiences on it. I one time had this experience where, to simplify it, I went into the woods, and I took a bowl of, it was like, I think it was 25 or 40X. I got it from thebestsalvia.com. And I cashed the bowl in 2 hits. I held both hits in for about 15 seconds each. And as soon as I got done exhaling, I just closed my eyes. And after about 20 seconds, I just felt this urge to just open up my eyes. And all of a sudden, all of the trees became one tree. And then that tree started to basically shine into this light. And from that light, there was basically just this entity that was made of an even brighter light that manifested from that light. And from its forehead, there was this line that shot from it into my forehead. It was this white line. And then all of a sudden I started to see everything from its perspective. And its perspective is it was seeing everything all around, kind of like a camera just going everywhere. Yeah. And then my forehead, it was like I could feel this sensation going like, kind of like going like this. It was kind of like my third eye was peeking open temporarily. And then I went back into that meditative state. I was listening to Tool at the time. So then I got up, and then I went over to the road, and then I started walking back over to my friend's house. I tried telling him about the experience, but he's not really a psychedelic person, so I just kind of came off as a crazy person to him.
So, what do you interpret this white entity as being or representing to yourself?
I think that they are conscious beings.
And what did its nature appear to be?
What do you mean by its nature?
Like, what was... As a human, we have like certain characteristics, certain goals.
What was its intentions? What was it like? What kind of personality did it have? Things along that line.
Yeah, and how did it see reality?
It's indescribable, and words just wouldn't do it justice.
If you had to try, though, do you reckon you could glean anything from it?
Very, very positive and loving and caring. But at the same time, I've also had experiences, and this isn't to put down that experience whatsoever, but whenever you have a bad trip and you come into contact with entities, they can be, it can be like demonic spirits is the best metaphor that I can look for.
Honestly, those words have done it justice, though, already.
I think that these entities are all around us 24/7. But we do have the ability to keep our distance away from some of them and bring ourselves closer to others.
Yes. I can imagine. I've only had contact with one dark entity, but I think one thing that really separates these guys, I've never met an entity that is dark, that has been like an all-encompassing mind, in that it can see, like the way you describe this entity of white light is that it could see everything all around it, like many cameras were spinning around and seeing all sorts of different perspectives. For me, my experience with entities like the machine elves is that they're very much related to this white light, or the white light, which you hear about in like near-death experiences and things like that. And with this white light, it seems to encompass everythingness. So everything that we could comprehend, everything that exists in the universe, at least to us, the multiverse, all of that, this exists within the white light. And everything else that we couldn't comprehend is within the white light. So the white light seems to be truth as well. And everything that's associated with this white light seems to be beings of beauty and wonder and positive entities. You could really call this white light heaven, which is described in religions. So it's like this, it seems to be that beings of positivity and light are beings of truth, because they understand that to be caught in a mind that is upset and sad and connected, for a mind to be negative, so to speak, it usually has to be identifying with illusion. You know, it has to be concerned about the future. It has to be reflecting on the past, aspects of reality that don't necessarily exist, aspects of reality that we will never experience, but we can only conceptualize and yet are still getting lost in. So for me, that's the main way I distinguish between dark and positive entities. Dark entities try and get us caught into illusion. They try and drag us into being concerned with the future, reflecting on the past. That was my experience with my dark entity, is it told me, after it showed me black magic, that I could never go to heaven. But then, you know, I realized pretty shortly after that what was happening. It was just a dark entity trying to give me a bad trip. Positive entities are always just trying to get me connected with truth, saying just be present and everything else will fall into place. So it seems like it's a similar energy. I remember watering my plant once and thinking to myself, it's really funny, you know, sometimes it probably like feels pain when I snip its leaves, or like, I mean, I'm sure it doesn't, but like I could imagine that it felt pain when I snipped its leaves and then felt rejuvenated when I watered it, but it would have no concept of another being affecting it and manipulating it, because it didn't have the tools to see outside itself, you know, very much like people. I was imagining that if I was to anthropomorphize the tree, I could make a metaphor, a comparison that the tree cannot perceive outside itself, even though it's being affected by forces outside itself, which I could relate to people. And the arrogance of people is that it sees, they see with their senses and they assume that all they can interpret with their senses is what's going on. Whereas we have no idea if there are entities all around us affecting us that our senses just can't pick up as of yet. And so when we are always constantly at a whim to our emotions, it seems. But it'd be very interesting to know if these are entities that are affecting us through outside of means that we can interpret them, and they're trying to prod us and trying to make us either more afraid or more loving, so that they have more influence over us. That's one theory, anyway.
What is your favorite psychedelic and why? And how has it changed your life, even to this day, and how, including your sober life?
LSD 100% is my favorite, followed by DMT a close second, because they're very similar to me. LSD probably was the first drug I took which really got me connected to love and self-acceptance and just all the most excellent emotions in the world. And at that point I had done psychedelics, but literally I think the only psychedelic I had done other than weed was synthetic weed. And as you can imagine,
that shit fucked my brain up.
Oh, it fucked my brain up too, and gave me, still to this day, the most intense trips I've had, and some of the worst trips I've had, or definitely the worst trips I've had. But
yeah, no, synthetic cannabis is nothing to fuck around with, especially to this day.
Hell fucking no. Like I always tell people, like, they got people in universities at the moment studying synthetic weed and stuff, and like I don't know enough about synthetic cannabinoids and the different, you know, versions of it to just say don't do synthetic weed, period. But for people who are like
no man, hashtag smoke a joint.
Yeah, exactly. For me, it's like people who are just getting into drugs, just stay the fuck away from synthetic weed, period. But yeah, LSD 100%, just because it was a fucking, like, that changed my life when I did that high dose of LSD. Life will never be the same again from that.
See, LSD was the first psychedelic that I ever had a real ego-death experience on, but DMT will always have a very, very special place in my heart. Right. It changed my life in the most positive, dramatic way possible.
Sure. How did it do it for you?
It turned me, I guess the best way that I can put this is that it turned me from a sociopath into a kind, loving, understanding human being who only wants three things from the world: peace, love, and understanding.
That's for me LSD. I was just like I don't know, like What's the difference between a psychopath and a sociopath?
You see, a psychopath knows exactly what they're doing. They can feel emotion, they just don't give a fuck. That is why a psychopath is more likely to kill somebody than a sociopath. Because a sociopath, they just don't have emotions. That doesn't mean that a sociopath isn't likely to kill somebody. I mean, it is possible, but they are the type of people that would more likely deceive you for their own personal gain.
Okay, so I think before LSD I was more of a sociopath, except for some reason I would say the only thing I loved were my 2 dogs. Other than that, I said I didn't love anybody or anything, and was pretty much emotionally disconnected from everybody I knew. And LSD was the first drug that I took that kind of woke me up out of that and changed my perspective on that.
I did feel happiness, but that was about it. So in other words, I was extremely fucking selfish, and psychedelics aided me in achieving another level of consciousness where I was able to reflect on myself and look at myself in a way that I was never ever able to do before. Psychedelics literally saved my life. If it wasn't for psychedelics, I would literally be dead right now.
It's funny, yeah. Like,
how do you feel about schizophrenia?
Well, like, what do I think of schizophrenia in terms of do I think it's real or?
Whenever I say schizophrenic, what is the first thing that comes to mind?
The place I used to work before this coronavirus thing, I had somebody come to the workplace. I'd get psychologists come to my workplace a lot because I worked at a float center. So you'd have a lot of people who are, just trying to de-stress. And I remember asking one psychologist, I was like, how do you define schizophrenia? And they said to me, the way that they define any mental illness is if it's symptoms that are causing you or others harm and getting in the way of you pursuing your goals and of achieving your own happiness. So I asked her, I was like, well, if somebody was talking to an imaginary being, but this imaginary being, and they thought it was totally real, but this imaginary being, which they saw but nobody else saw, would constantly give this person compliments, and whenever they were feeling down, they would lift this person up and help them get through the day. Would this person be schizophrenic?
Dude, I think you just described most religious people.
And this psychologist said, at least by their own definition, no, they wouldn't be schizophrenic. So for me, schizophrenia kind of falls under the same place as a lot of other mental illnesses, and I think it's kind of a byproduct of morality. I think it's like we have decided that how man should function in reality, and it's probably very much based on Christian values, because whenever we are not abiding by these Christian values which have set up society for us, that's when we start saying, oh, you're suffering from this mental illness, you're suffering from that mental illness. So for me, it's very loose, like, and that's why so many different psychologists diagnose people with so many different symptoms, and why it's so easy to get yourself a prescription for anything these days, because you can just say, I'm feeling tired, I'm feeling down, and yep, you fall under the category of bipolar, schizophrenia, depression, anxious. It's like, for me, I think schizophrenia, I think schizophrenics and assigning somebody schizophrenia may make people trapped in a mind which they can't actually escape, because it's not quite like a broken leg. That's what my first thoughts are anyway on it.
Well, people who exhibit schizophrenic tendencies usually end up in the mental hospital, and they're usually drugged, and if they seem to be getting a little out of hand, they'll be put into a straitjacket and put into a little room.
Right.
That kind of fucks up their head a little bit more, don't you think?
I would agree, yeah.
I don't think that the answer is to drug these people and fucking give them electrical shocks and put them into rooms and fucking straitjackets. These people need real help. And they can be saved.
Yes, that's the thing, yeah. That no one believes that.
Like if you look in Aboriginal or traditional societies where you have shamans, usually they're actually taken in for shamanic rituals where they can get the help they need, where they can be given, where they can be passed down to them
these ancient techniques that have been used for thousands of years, and all of these different attributes come into play where they can even start participating in ceremonies where they can consume ayahuasca.
Yeah, this is the thing. It's like our society has a very like one-track mind, and if you don't fall into that, you will be assigned a mental illness, and that mental illness needs to be cured. In other words, you need to get back onto the one track that everybody else is. Otherwise, you'll just be pushed away out of the lens of society. But I 100% agreed. I think the truth is that many schizophrenics are in touch with just a different reality, and have just been assigned a different mind, which could be utilized if it was understood and accepted. Like many people who take psychedelics end up going to a mental hospital. And unfortunately, one of the reasons why I made my channel is because I disagree with this. The way that people are being taught to treat their psychedelic visions is by just saying, it was just a hallucination, it was just craziness, this is the real world and that's the fake world.
But they're being told that it is a delusion.
Yes,
and
yes.
And even whenever they use the word hallucination, they're not even using the word right, technically speaking.
Well, I think, because doesn't hallucination mean an experience that is not aligned with reality?
The way that I look at it, there's really no way to say that whether or not it is like... Fuck, I just lost my train of thought, man. What were we talking about?
The definition of hallucination.
Yeah, like, we can't say whether or not it's real or not. In all actuality, these psychedelic experiences are actually fucking happening. Like, if you look at the people in societies and in small cultures that actually use these, they're taking this shit very seriously. But it seems to work. It is the one thing that actually presents itself to you. This is something that if you actually go out and look for and you have the fucking courage to do this and do it right, your life will fucking change forever, man.
Sure, yes, yes. I mean, I can't imagine my reality would go back to normal.
It is like dying and then being reborn.
Yes, it is. It is. And I think it's really important as well because there's so many... Just one second, I'm just going to turn my light on. There's so many people who have thought, like, when you're born, you have a very pure headspace. A very innocent, uncorrupted mindset of and perception of reality. Slowly, of course,
that is one thing that I've always liked about LSD and psilocybin mushrooms is the fact that a good majority of the time I will have this experience where it is like I am actually seeing the world through like a child's eyes again. You know what I mean?
Yes, totally. And I think that's really important because it's like
you're seeing the world new again.
New, and you have a chance to rewire the way you see reality. I know, like, there's so many things as a kid which I got wrong. So many definitions of words which I misunderstood. So many, the nature of relationships between people which I just didn't understand. And the only things that I realized were wrong and then I corrected were the ones that other people corrected for me. So in other words, it's like as a child, as your mind is getting molded by society into how you're meant to look at reality, there's a lot of stuff which you're going to get wrong even when you're comparing it to how society is trying to get your mind treated. Yet this isn't something we ever shake off. We are literally living a reality and still remaining in the same definition of reality that we assigned to it when we were freaking just out of infancy. And we don't ever question this relationship with us and reality. It's like all it takes is one psychedelic trip for you to realize one powerful psychedelic trip. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. One powerful one for you to realize actually maybe I got everything wrong.
Or maybe I need to question everything that I've ever thought in my entire life. And I need to rethink everything now.
Yes. I think it's really important for people as well, especially if you're not in the right headspace. Because there's no point in telling somebody who's got their shit together, who is really happy and living a fulfilling life, that you need to start over again. If they want to do psychedelics, fuck yeah. But there's no point in making somebody who's...
I feel like people who are in that mindset, the reason that they would do psychedelics is to continuously evolve what they do in any realm, whether it is the way that they work, the way that they pursue business, the way that they create art, the way they view the world, the way they meditate. Like all of these different kind of things, they would use psychedelics as catalysts for the imagination, creativity, self-improvement, or whatever, you know?
And even it's like, it's like, you get a lot of people in the spiritual community who bag on psychedelics because of that, like one Alan Watts quote, which is like, as soon as you get the message, hang up the phone. Which, by the way, if you're somebody who hangs up on people after you get the message of why they're calling, you're an asshole. Like, we do small talk. But the reason why I disagree with that as well is because for me it's like...
Yeah, in fact, that was actually one quote that I ever heard from the dude. And it was one reason why I never really felt myself drawn to him. He was a very smart dude. I have nothing against him. The dude certainly knew what he was talking about whenever it came to a lot of different subjects, but personally, I just don't agree on a lot of his perspectives, especially whenever it comes to the psychedelic experience. Not to mention, I don't think that there is the answer whenever it comes to psychedelics. I think that there are an infinite amount of answers that you can get from the psychedelic experience. It is just that sometimes you have to integrate certain answers into your life before you can continue on with your psychedelic journey in the most positive and the most profound and the most beneficial way.
Yeah. No, totally. Like, I like Alan Watts. I think he's got tons of wisdom.
He has a really good voice, too.
Yes, he does. And I respect a lot of the spiritual community who have left psychedelics in their shadow and are now pursuing, you know, a sober lifestyle. But I think that a lot of people are afraid of psychedelics and like to project that fear onto other people. And, you know, they are afraid to do it themselves. And so they say you shouldn't do psychedelics. That's one aspect of it. And I think also... people are forgetting that we can use things...
People who have a problem with psychedelics have a problem with themselves.
I think also people who are using... people forget you can use something for different reasons, you know. And it's... psychedelics...
It isn't what you do, it's how you do it.
Psychedelics don't just have to be about helping yourself. They don't just have to be medicine. They can also be about... learning the nature of reality. It's like we don't just read.
It's all about learning.
Exactly. It's not just, we don't just read.
Personally, I don't think that anybody should go into the psychedelic experience looking to get high. Psychedelics don't get you high. You have a psychological trip on psychedelics. I don't think that psychedelics should be used recreationally. And maybe THC, but that is just a psychoactive compound. THC in itself is not a psychedelic, but psychedelics in themselves, speaking now of like plant-based traditional psychedelics like Salvia divinorum, psilocybin mushrooms, DMT, peyote, all of these sort of things, these are not drugs that you get high on. These are tools for personal and or spiritual development. These are catalysts for language, for the imagination, for art, for evolving communication. Psychedelics are consciousness expanding drugs. They are not some toys to get high on. They are tools for personal and or spiritual growth in some way, shape, or form, depending on the person.
It's true. But even something like weed, you know, like I don't smoke weed often now because even weed has changed its effect on me. When I first started taking psychedelics, when I first started like reducing my use of psychedelics, I still wanted the psychedelic experience, but I didn't have enough time to trip 8 hours a day, you know, and I didn't have access to DMT back then. So the thing I started doing was cutting back on my weed use, and then I started treating weed like a psychedelic. So every time I'd smoke weed, I'd meditate, do all that sort of stuff, and I'd only smoke weed, you know, a limited time, which was very hard for me, but I wanted that psychedelic experience. And sure enough, weed lived up to that purpose. It started being incredibly powerful. It started tripping me out like psychedelics do. And so I found that the way we treat things absolutely affects the effect of whatever it is that we're treating it and how we're treating it. So yeah, I mean, I think, you know, psychedelics, if you think that you're using psychedelics to heal you, but you're constantly using psychedelics, then obviously you're, in other words, never healing yourself, or you're always staying with some sort of problem, and you're not probably getting the message, which is you need to accept yourself for who you are. But if you're using psychedelics to learn about the nature of the universe, that's very different. That's like, instead of just reading self-help books for the rest of your life, you read self-help books for maybe a couple of years, and then you know, start reading Descartes and philosophers and things like this. You go to new subjects. So it's like, that's how I feel with psychedelics. At some point, yes, you will get the message that you need to accept yourself, and you get the healing, and then you can start using it for different reasons. Then you can start learning about the universe, learning beyond yourself. That's how I look at it anyway. That's how I kind of counter the spiritual community that say you should just eventually leave psychedelics behind you.
Do you believe in telepathy?
Well, that's a hard one. The way I look at it is the people that you meet are aspects of your own mind. So whenever you want, you can, of course, communicate with the mind of somebody who exists within your own mind anyway. So yes, but I don't think it is as other people would assume telepathy to be. Because there is this thing like, so at one part of me thinks that all of consciousness is united anyway. But then I think telepathy, people talk about, can you like read other people's minds and stuff like that? And I think that aspect of telepathy is probably more connected with the fact that I think like the person I'm talking to right now, you are an aspect of my imagination.
I am just a reflection of your psyche.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it's like that person that I'm talking to is an aspect of myself.
You are me, and I am you, and we are all one. We are all one consciousness experiencing itself subjectively.
Right. So it's like that. It makes sense to me that you probably could find a way to communicate with other aspects of your own mind. Like I don't see why you shouldn't be able to. The first time I started getting in touch with machine elves, I really got a sense that they were my ancestors. And I remember I called them my future and past ancestors. I didn't really know what that meant because it didn't really make sense. But since then I think that they like, it's like we have.
So does that mean that the future in itself is already predetermined?
Yes.
Or did this happen because we came back in time to fix the future?
That's one aspect of it as well that I thought about. I thought about like the fact that one reality happens and then like you evolve to a point where you evolve beyond linear time perception, and then from there.
So in other words, consciousness in itself is constantly transcendentalizing to a higher state of being. Exactly.
It's constantly getting to that point, and then from there it can go back and.
It is an infinite state of novelty that never stops.
Yes, exactly. Always creating new novelty within itself, which is the ever-expanding universe. So that's a sense that I've got from it. So these ancestors are kind of like the aspect of us which have lived our own life, lived our past life, lived lives of the future, but don't exist in linear time perception. So they exist outside of it and are able to interact with us. Something like that, I think.
Yeah, it is very, very hard to actually vocalize, but it
is.
Yeah.
If I could understand it, I wouldn't be afraid of smoking a high dose of DMT. And I am. Every time I smoke a high dose of DMT, I can feel my heartbeat racing. Like, if I understood it, I wouldn't care at all. But the fact is, I get humbled every single time.
I know that a lot of people get very anxious and nervous whenever they consume DMT, but for me personally, it's never been like that. I always get this very warm, beautiful feeling inside of myself. It is like this beautiful sensation of like returning home or something, you know?
Sure. I mean, that's like, it's funny, you know. I just started smoking DMT again, but not at such a high dose. But it's actually quite a nice come up. It's like a warm blanket coming over you sometimes. Whereas when I first started doing it, I wasn't nervous the very first time, but I think I just wanted to go as hard as I could. So obviously the imploding feeling and having your atoms ripped apart and stuff like that was fairly uncomfortable. So I think that's the extent which I usually get a little bit nervous about. I'm like, am I going to have another breakthrough? But like, if it's not a breakthrough, it's cool. It's chill.
About 5 months ago, you were sponsored by a Kratom website called Green to Health. How has Kratom aided you on your journeys? And do you still use Kratom to this day? And what are your thoughts on consuming Kratom daily?
I don't agree with consuming Kratom daily. Always in my sponsorship. That's why I ended up that's why me and the sponsor, or one of the reasons why me and this.
But what if somebody used it medically daily?
I don't know enough. I only know from what I've seen online. Like I watched Psych Substance's video about daily use of Kratom, and he had a very, very negative experience. So generally, I ward people off. Any substance, I say use in moderation and treat it with respect.
For about 3 years of my life, I used it daily.
How'd you find it?
Oh, it was amazing. It absolutely changed my life. It healed me psychologically in ways that are indescribable. I mean, granted, I understand that there probably are people who abuse Kratom and don't use it for what I would consider to be the right reasons, kind of like how Adam did it, and because of those actions they have to suffer negative consequences from that. But Kratom is certainly a miracle drug for a lot of people in many ways.
Right. Yeah, no, I mean, like, I think
Metrogina speciosa is a blessing to the world of medicine.
Is that the scientific name of Kratom?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, no, I think like most things, like people are going to have different experiences. And I imagine for myself, just knowing my nature, who I am, if I was to do Kratom every day, I'd probably be fine. Like, I don't have a very addictive personality, and I tend to be very comfortable with calm downs and things like that. So I think, I think it would actually benefit me, but my sponsor was basically saying that everybody would be fine and that you should like he was encouraging people to do it daily, and I was like, probably some people would benefit a lot, but maybe not the right advice for everybody. Have you meditated on psychedelics?
Yes, but psychedelics aren't something that I would take every single day.
Right, so like daily meditation, you mean?
Yes.
Right.
Oh, yes.
Right, interesting.
I mean, long periods. Because if you think about it, there are like Buddhists that will do it for like fucking literally whenever they are not dealing with their primal needs, like having to go to the bathroom or having to eat, they're meditating most of the fucking time.
Sure, yeah.
Because they have found this very unspeakable center somewhere in their mind. It's like they live in the imagination. I mean, maybe not everybody needs to live that sort of lifestyle and be in that sort of mindset 24/7, but I would be willing to argue that if we had more people in the world with that mindset, we would see less war, rape, murder, theft, and all of these other negative things that come from really, really terrible human beings, because we would all have we would have a much deeper understanding as a society to the nature of reality, to the nature of human beings, of nature, of the mind.
I know, it's true.
War is childish. War is barbaric.
Yeah, it is. Like the one thing that meditation does as well is it makes you to realize that your power comes from within. Everything that you want is within. It's not in the outside world, and that's what war comes from. It's like war is the outside conditions need to be like this, and you are a threat to my outside conditions, and we must face each other in battle, and that's the only way to solve it. It's like, well, actually, everything. If you can both just chill the fuck out. You both have the right to meditate every single day, and that's all you actually really need. Even like, you know what I mean, like everything you need can be revealed through meditation.
The only thing that sort of mentality will ever lead to is human extinction.
Well, it's true, man. It is true. It's scary. It is scary to think about it, but yeah, it's crazy also to think about the fact that we're not like that we have that inside us. The fact that we could quite easily just go out and kill our brethren, It's brutal.
Didn't Bob Marley stop a war and also stop conflict between two gangs?
Did he?
Something like that, dude.
I can imagine though. If anyone's going to do it, it's going to be Bob Marley.
Do you think that psychedelics such as DMT, psilocybin, ayahuasca, and peyote should be legal in areas where it's currently not legal? And what sort of impact do you believe that having these sort of substances legalized would make on our species and on the world in its entirety?
Big question. Firstly, I do think they should be legalized. In terms of dangers of like people flying out of windows and stuff like that, I think people will learn pretty fast that psychedelics aren't like alcohol or weed for that matter.
Not at all. They literally do the opposite thing.
Yeah, I think people will learn that pretty fast, and so the danger of legalization is, I don't think it's really there. I think people will only use these substances when they are wanting to expand their mind. I think they'll be used for greater, richer purposes, because when they're illegal, the only way to get your hands on them are through dealers who are also dealing other illegal substances like cocaine and heroin and things like that. So of course,
unless you know a chemist.
Yes, unless you know like someone like that, then yeah, it's literally like, obviously that's why you have so many people who are partying on psychedelics, and they do make wicked party drugs. I won't say they don't, but I think that's when they become dangerous, because all you have to do is take a little bit extra and they will absolutely just step out of the zone of party drug to, if you're not ready for it, a very bad trip. But what it's trying to do is just trying to expand and free your consciousness, which you're then fighting. But I think if it's legalized and people will start using the substance in a more healing, beneficial way, you'll probably see a lot more people doing ceremonies and things like that with it. I think from there you'll find a far less material world. I think you'll find a way less material world. And I think this is going to happen because I think it's going to be coinciding with the evolution of technology. I think technology is going to get to a point where AR and VR become incredibly powerful. So even if you're not doing psychedelics, you've still got access to like some virtual reality, which at the click of a couple of buttons can give you an entire mansion. And so the purpose of you sacrificing your entire life to a 9-to-5 to get lots of money, to have a big house and to have a nice car, that shit's going to become meaningless, because any and everybody almost is going to be able to purchase VR, which gives them access to that sort of reality.
What I cannot wait for is what I personally like to call RVR. Realistic virtual reality. Basically, and it's not impossible. That is the thing.
Hell no. Yeah, hell no. I think it's coming. I don't even think it's particularly that far away when you look at how far technology has come already. I
personally don't like the viewpoint on AI where people are like, oh, well, AI will take over the world or kill everybody. First of all, if it is really something that fucking intelligent, it would look at us in the same way that we would look at ants. It would just fucking ignore us unless we bit them.
Yeah. Yeah, this idea that if they get so smart, they'll see us as a danger, that's assuming that they are at their peak of intelligence.
That is assuming that they themselves are not, in comparison to us, that of gods.
Yeah, I know. Honestly, like...
Not that they are gods, but they're like gods in comparison to us.
Right. My ascended state. My points on trips where I feel connected with everything, where I feel like I'm in a far greater and more true and pure headspace than when I'm sober. I never feel the urge to go around killing my human species. I think that's a pointless mentality. If the AI is going to get to a very smart point, I would predict that it's going to do the exact opposite. That it's going to help us. I really think it would just help us. I think it would just try and create a reality that that we would admire. I think it's probably going to help in a utopia. I'm sure that the risk of it being the exact opposite is there, but if I had to put my money on it, there's no way I'd bet that that's what's going to come for us. I have a positive outcome for it.
Alright everybody, that is all the time that Trip and I have left today. Trip, is there anything else that you would like to say, anything that you would like to point to?
Check out TripWhip on YouTube. Obviously it's my main channel, but I'm starting to put a lot more love into my Instagram, which is TripWhip as well, but with double P on both the Trip and the Whip. I'm probably going to be putting a lot more vlogs on there. And currently I'm doing a microdose experiment where I'm journaling on Instagram, but I'll have a main video on that come out on YouTube. So if you're into my YouTube channel, check out my Instagram as well, because they're starting to work hand in hand. Other than that, got a merch store. If you're into psychedelic clothes, go check that out. Links on my YouTube channel. But yeah, that's everything.
Okay everybody, if you enjoyed this video and wish to support what I do, then subscribe to DMT Infinity here on YouTube.com. You can also invest into DMT Infinity by donating to my Patreon at patreon.com/DMTinfinity. All links will be in the description below. Regardless, I do hope that you all enjoyed this video. If you did, leave it a like, start your own conversation down in the comment section below, hit that bell notification button to be notified each and every single time that I upload a brand new video, and as always, I'm your host DMT Infinity, and I will catch you all in the next one. Peace.